Yeah. Well, what they really need to do. Yeah. Well, what they really need to do. Yeah, I see you have some good hotel art in your background.
Yes, it's beautiful. Think about getting a couple of pieces for Christmas.
Right. I don't know. They secure those to the wall pretty good. So.
How do you know that, Porter?
I probably read it somewhere.
Okay.
Okay, all. Well, good evening. Welcome to the Growth Planning Committee's meeting for December 7th, 2021. And we'll start off with our introductions. I'm Dan Saunders. Werner.
Gilliam.
Janet.
Janet Powell. Hello.
Jim.
Jim Fitzgerald.
All right, Paul.
Paul Hogan. Good
Liz.
Liz Johnson.
Hey, Eli.
Yes, Eli Rubin.
All right. And then Liz.
Durfee, planning consultant.
Okay, and Tom.
Tom Morgan.
All right. And then Jim McMahon. Are you there? There you go.
Yes, he is, yeah. Hi, James McMahon.
Excellent. Okay, I think I hit everybody. We have anyone in the attendance? Looks like Jen and Chip. So thanks for joining us, Jen and Chip. We will start off Number 2 on our agenda is discussion on chapters number 1 through number 17.
Yeah. So, Dan, I have, if I can just briefly kind of interrupt.
Sure.
I have
Absolutely.
one, I'll call it a little bit of, meeting attendance, housekeeping that I'd like to just go over with the committee. So, so we know we've been utilizing, just because of kind of the informal nature of the meetings that we have, we've been utilizing the chat function, of the meetings, and in discussions at town hall, primarily with Lori and the Board of Selectmen, we've been requested to not utilize the chat function as part of our meeting setup. Instead, what we've been requested to do is that if we want to have we can have folks participate with us, but that we bring them, but that if they want to comment, that as they raise their hands, that they're then brought into the meeting, as an attendee, they can share their comments with us, and then be put back to the audience. And I think a lot, some of that has to do, I think, with consistency with other boards and committees in terms of that we all maintain the same process for, public participation. But I know we've been kind of informally, we've been using that chat function, but we've been requested to, come back in alignment with the other committees.
Okay.
The chat function's not recorded and kept on the video?
Well, all participation is recorded as part of the recorded as part of the meeting. So if folks are brought in, and I believe the chat is part of does become part of the transcript. Am I correct in that, Dave? Yeah.
I think so.
But it is something that does wind up, there is a record of it.
Okay. So, so any attendees, if you have a comment you'd like to make, please just raise your hand, and when we have the opportunity, we'll acknowledge you and give you the opportunity to speak. Okay. Otherwise, we'll stay consistent with the other boards, and the chat won't be utilized. All right. Thanks, Warner. All right. So discussion on chapters 1 through 17. So who's Tom or Liz? Are you gonna lead us through that?
Sure, I can do that. It was either the last meeting or the meeting before, we got quite a few comments, mostly from Paul. And Paul, I want to say appreciative of the time you put into it. We responded to the comments. The document is 2-color fonts. The black was the original comment, and the red is our response. And that went out with your packets a few days ago. I don't know if people had a chance to read them. Okay, if I can run through it quick, because I'm not sure everybody has seen it, but
Yeah.
I think we saw it before the last meeting, but I haven't seen it again. If I missed it.
oh no, we did send it before the last meeting, and we didn't have time to get to it that night. And because we didn't have time to get to it, we sent it out again a week ago. So we just wanted to Paul, respond to your comments, any other comments that came our way, but mostly they were from Paul, and they were good. So I guess it's up to you guys. We could go through it right now one by one, or if most of you have read it. Basically, we accepted most of Paul's comments.
If you're looking for the documents in your email, those would have gone out last. I believe they went out last Wednesday. Whenever the agenda was sent out.
I can put it on the screen right now if that's helpful.
Yeah, why don't we do that, Tom, just so others can see it as well.
All right, I'm disabled at the moment, so I'll need some permission to share with you. Okay. Excellent. Now, is this large enough for you all to read, or should I make it bigger?
It's fine.
Good, good. So you see, Paul's comments were in black, and then Liz and I responded in red. So introduction, he said, we had the introduction chapter was kind of had a lot of material in it. He suggested putting some of that to the rear of the document, and we agree with that. Mm-hmm. I'll just move right through this, and just you guys let me know if you disagree with any of this. The next one was a little miscue. It was my fault. I didn't have draft number 9 out to you. But as of this evening, we're working from draft number 10, and that's the comments that Dan submitted. Dan, you weren't with us last meeting, but we did get your comments. So we'll address those probably next, but momentarily. So regional cooperation. This is this one here. Our response was the draft should read as follows: resiliency, emergency response, sustainable economic development, and water quality are but 4 areas where a regional approach is beneficial. So if anybody has any response to that, speak up. It's the regional cooperation chapter. Okay, and the dark sky comment, we're fine with that as well. And then the next comment was on environmental protection. Paul, do you want to jump in and hear it anywhere?
No, you can go ahead. I haven't read this in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I'm just looking at your comment again.
Okay. So that's our response, and if anybody has a different idea, just speak up.
I'm reading the second line with the connections to the municipal sewer.
Yeah.
In red?
I think in red, and I think that may work a little bit better than extensions will be supported, because I don't know if we have, if in an economic sense, there's no funding to help people connect to the sewer. Sewer line extensions are encouraged, but I don't know if they're supported in a monetary sense. I don't know if that's what you meant, Paul. I'm sorry.
Well, I meant that if funding became available, if there were grants, if there were,
right.
I wanted it to be expansive enough to include extensions, whether it's a municipal extension or private.
Right. I mean, right now, I think it's the responsibility of the homeowner, the person that wants the extension, right? I don't think there's any public funding.
Well, we're in the middle of, we're at the beginning of the most massive infrastructure project that has ever been passed in the history of the country. So
agreed. It's just we don't know how that's going to turn out. I think that they should be supported. I hope they are supported.
So I guess the difference here is Paul, are you okay with our language? Connections to municipal sewer will be encouraged? I mean, it's basically saying pretty much the same thing, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on this environmental protection paragraph?
I think it's going to make sense. What Paul's saying is we encourage it where it's appropriate. I mean, if the house is tied, the scenario is always going to dictate how it's going to work. I mean, my house is 600 feet away from the road. I wouldn't pay for it. I'd build a new septic system. But if your house is like right on the road, it's totally going to make sense for you to tie into the septic system. So, I think it's just I think the sentence is appropriate, and that we encourage it where we can.
Okay, so there's 2 votes for encouraged.
Yeah, encourage is good.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on this environmental protection paragraph?
the next sentence, the extent of impervious surfaces will be reduced. How is that possible when we're talking, ultimately, when we're talking about development and more driveways?
The intent is whenever there's an opportunity to have less impervious surface, the town should jump on it. And I've seen that happen a lot, particularly in the last 10 years. Planning boards everywhere cognizant of stormwater. So when somebody wants to redevelop a property, you know, typically the question for the applicant will be, do you really need that much hot top? You know, and get them thinking about it, you know, and years ago, they just kind of paved everything in sight without thinking twice. But it's just trying to encourage that conversation. So you have less stormwater runoff, and stormwater, of course, carries pollutants into the ponds and streams.
Right. I don't know. People could argue will be reduced, like reduced from now.
Yeah, reduced from now, reduced from what might be proposed. But the emphasis will be on minimizing hot top as opposed to just kind of put whatever out there, you know. They're going to make people think more about it, particularly developers.
Well, maybe we say that the extent of impervious surfaces will be minimized.
Like minimized better than reduced?
Yeah, because then I think it goes to what Liz's question on, you know, if you've got a certain amount now, we're going to ask people to dig up their driveways.
Yeah, no, Liz, that's a good question. I'm kind of I eat and drink this 5 days a week, so you're coming at it as a lay person, and you had a bit of insight there.
That would imply that the town's going to have a bunch of people with asphalt driveways turn them into dirt.
No, crushed stone. There's the diamond-shaped blocks that where the grass grows in between. There are lots of products that
Another product.
Should you be calling it out as it is? It's really the extent of new construction. Creating impervious surfaces will be reduced. You kind of have to call out. I don't want the town coming to me and saying you got to get rid of this. You know, it's there. You know. No. It's so.
But it is looking forward. This is in the vision statement, right?
Yeah. Well, no, this isn't. This is in the.
This is
in the chapter.
This is in the chapters. Excuse me.
Yeah.
But this is all in the future tense. I mean, we are looking ahead to make projections about how we envision it, best possible vision.
Yes.
I like minimized.
Yeah.
Minimized. Okay. And we'll leave out the part about dictating to people what they got to do with their driveway.
Right.
And even the next statement, I mean, obviously that's a great thing to reduce that. How, will it be strictly regulated? Like how? Because right now people can call anyone they want for anything they want.
Yeah, it's deliberately vague, Liz. I mean, because as a practical matter, in order to actually do this, the town has to adopt an ordinance for herbicides or pesticides, or so this is like kind of a advisory document, but the real meat and potatoes will come later when they adopt an ordinance.
So I'm just going to jump in for a second, because this is actually part of the vision statement that we did revise already. So it must just be under the wrong heading here. It is part of the vision.
Yes, the vision.
It has been revised. So I'm going to say that we make sure we're looking at the correct version, because I think as Tom mentioned, we didn't have the current version on the website perhaps when Paul reviewed this section. So before we get into the weeds too much,
All right.
We might want to take a step back and make sure we're working from our most current version.
All right. Well, I'm going to get us out of vision right now. Then let's go to page 14. We're going to ask Werner that one.
And so that was the year the town created a shoreland general development zone.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Do you know the answer to that, Werner?
Oh, that's a great question. I can get you the date of when. So you want the dates of when when Riverfront and Dock Square became general development districts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we can include that detail in the existing land use, we will. And
yeah, I can get you those dates. I want to say that was that was either 2009, 2010, but I can get you it was in that era, but I can get you the actual dates of that.
Thanks.
Next paragraph, we're going to add a sentence. Paul suggests we add a sentence to explain why connecting to the sewer is preferable to development with septics. And we agree with that. Does the committee have any comments or suggestions here? If not, that's the way we'll go. Paul commented on the village parcel being past tense. And
the committee being past tense.
Yes.
As opposed, yes, it was an ad hoc committee.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Right.
Thank you, yeah.
Good catch.
We're just going to say, the vision was completed in July 2020.
Works.
Demographics. Good comment. We will address this.
With one caveat, we did talk to Werner about this, the issue of outdated data, because it's been a while since we started the process.
Right.
So Werner, I think you were going to take on that discussion.
Well, we have, I think we wanted to, I think it's important for us to stick to using the census data, as part of it, as, versus any other type of, versus any other data source. The tricky thing is that with some of the projected population numbers, whenever you're in between censuses, is that they're exactly that, they're projected. We had one year where, the port was projected to increase in population, and we actually wound up at a decrease, within, the bicentennial. So, I would suggest that if we're going to use anything that we use, what we have listed here, the American, community survey estimate pieces, that way it's just consistent.
Yeah, and so thanks, Werner. So that's, I think, relevant to some of the population projections that, Paul, you had pointed out, I think. Some of the data sources, we're going to stick with the community survey and the census data. I think one of the challenges that that Tom and I are going to face, though, is that we don't necessarily have the budget to go back and rewrite all of the census data and redo the tables and a lot of the figures and calculations. One thing that we had talked about was making sure that the future land use chapter, which we wrote recently, has some of the current census data that was published, since after we put the demographics and the housing chapters together. And in certain places where I think maybe the numbers don't impact a lot of figures or calculations, then we can incorporate some notes on some of the updated census data. Certainly the population in 2020, we can get that in, but a lot of the data that we used for the housing and demographics chapters is all the American Community Survey. I think 2018 5-year estimates. And so that data is a year out date. And then obviously the census data came out. So if folks are comfortable with us including sort of a mix of different years, as long as it's clear what the year of the data source is, and then we can make some updates without going through the process of revising, full chapters.
Yeah, I think, this is Paul, I think that's fine. I just, when I wrote the comments, I was sensitive to that I knew that would be an issue. But maybe in the future land use, we somehow cross-reference that, even reference COVID, that the project was a unanticipated multi-year project. And therefore, some of the data, was included and calculated everything prior to, the delay in the project, and then the future land use chapter incorporates the most current. Just because I just didn't want people to get this thing on, May 15th and say, why are they giving us numbers from,
right? Yeah, maybe in the introduction, we can include that information, and we could also think about adding a date to the chapter, to the chapters themselves, if you think that would help clarify things a little bit too.
I think if it was in the intro, that would be fine, if you can figure a way to.
Sure. Okay.
And then maybe a statement about that, even though that data may be different, it doesn't change the direction that the plan is headed, right? And some to that extent, so that, like new data came in, it completely throws out the economic section.
And it won't, because, the data didn't change much because the town hasn't changed so much in 2 years.
Exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't change the trends.
Right. So we ought to say that positively so that people understand that. At least that's what our belief is.
Yeah.
They can disagree with it.
Okay, on page 8 in demographics, we have a comment about the consolidated school. As you see in red here, we think the point was that the majority of school-age population is in the consolidated school or the high school. So, Paul, you're okay with that change?
Let me just read it again.
The change is just to show the population that's in the consolidated school.
Right. So do we have does that suggest, the low point is in the middle school age at this point? Is that what that is telling us?
I don't have the table open. I can look at, you mean where the lowest proportion of the population is attending the school?
Well, if you say it's in the elementary school and the high school, that suggests lower per grade in the middle school, or it's just the number of grades that are in the middle school? I don't even.
Well, there's more than one other school in that figure. So let me just open it up.
I was just trying to understand what the point of that was.
Oh, let's see here. Okay.
What's the consolidated K through
5?
Is it
5.
K through 5? Does it include kindergarten, or is kindergarten someplace else now?
Well, it's kindergarten.
Kindergarten's there, yeah.
So
Okay.
right from the hospital to consolidated.
So we can, what we were suggesting was modify, and this might not answer your question fully, but what we were suggesting was modifying the text to just show what population was attending the consolidated school, which is in Kennebunkport.
Sure, that's fine.
The figure itself, the number was just cut off. And so we can easily edit that to make sure that's all displayed.
That's fine.
But the pie chart shows the middle school, the high school, the consolidated school, Kennebunk Elementary School, C Road students, and Mildred L. Day.
And that's based on the kids that live here and which school they're going to.
Yes, that's from the annual report.
What about Thornton Academy, private school? So
that's the data we have from the town's annual report. So I'm guessing that that's maybe not tracked.
Yeah, it's definitely not tracked.
No.
At least for the annual report. They're just talking about public education.
Yeah,
Right.
a lot of people have left this year. because of how things are.
Liz, do you want to address the next paragraph too?
Just skim over this. So, chart below. Okay, so that is what we just talked about, the chart.
Right.
And so the following comment is updated income levels could also be reported. So similarly, that's also American Community Survey data. The future population projection, I did put the most current version of the overall population projection that we have, and that's from the state. So we are using population projections from the school district and then also from the state of Maine. And so we did put the most current version from the state of Maine in the future land use chapter.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is housing. Yeah, we agree with this comment, Paul, and we'll make the pie chart go away.
So, and the comment was on adding a little bit more closure to the short-term rental discussion in the housing chapter.
Yeah. Did you still need those numbers as far as what the vote was?
Tom, did you ask for the numbers for the vote?
I don't recall asking for it. Did we ask that during a meeting, Werner?
Well, I just saw that on the housing there. It says, that I think Paul's making reference to Portland Press article that was missing the first digit.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so you're asking for the relevant data.
Yeah.
So
that I'm asking you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So the vote on that was 627 in favor of the short-term rental ordinance and 565 opposed.
All right. We'll include that in the chapter. You guys ready for natural resources?
Yeah.
So there were some comments on making sure that we are talking about agriculture, even though there's not a lot of soils that are designated as significant farmland soils, and clarifying the section that talks about the types of soils that are most prevalent, which are not suitable for farming. And we'll clean up the language a little bit, that just to acknowledge that make it clear that there are still farms in Kennebunkport, even though the soils are not great for farming, not optimal. There was a question about the hops farm. That was something that we did talk about, I believe, at a growth planning committee meeting. Does anyone know, or can anyone confirm if that's gone?
The farm that, I think that was the related to Batson River, but that's in Arundel. It's not in Kennebunkport.
No, the farm. Yeah, the farm is
the hops farm.
Oh,
Yeah.
the farm is?
It was on Arundel Road.
Oh, it's Arundel
Yep.
Road.
Yeah, the property's on the market. And so
It's not working right now then. It's for sale and it's not working.
yeah, we shouldn't.
Yeah.
They're not tending the crop.
Okay.
The hobby didn't work.
Yeah, it existed for 1 year, and
Okay.
it's
Okay. No hops
No.
farm.
won't be part of the history.
Then let's see, there was a question about if Kennebunkport has a beef cattle farm. And that was something that was in the 2012 plan. Does anyone know if they're...
Well, the farm next to the landing school is not in Kennebunkport.
No,
We don't know if that's the one that was referenced in 2012. Probably not.
Yeah, that's the one in Arundel. I'm not aware of any that that I'd classify as like commercial commercial use. I mean, you do have some folks that have I'd probably put in a classification of like hobby farms, that may have that might have a half a dozen cattle, something like that, but not anything that would that I think that kind of rises to a high level, of what folks typically think of as commercial livestock.
Yeah.
Sure.
Are we trying to define? What?
We
What's
were just
create
listing
commercial?
out. We were just listing out some of the agriculture in Kennebunkport. So if there isn't a beef cattle farm that folks are aware of, we'll take that out.
Yeah, I would take it out.
Yep.
Not aware.
Okay.
I think we've got a hand raised in the audience.
Yes, I just wanted to point out, you guys were just talking about the hops farm. The farm just that borders the Conservation Trust has a lot of cattle, and they've done massive improvements on the field. I mean, it's on Arundel Road, and they have several cattle out there, and they revamped the fields in a very serious way in the last 2 years. So I would say they have something planned there. I mean, I just don't like the tone. I mean, really, we do want to encourage agriculture here, and if people are doing that,
Definitely.
I mean, I think that counts more than the hop farm.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Oh yeah, just go look. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I don't.
Yeah.
We're not trying to discourage agriculture at
No.
all. It's just trying to get the inventory accurate.
Yeah, well, that
That's
is
all.
they've done a lot of work there. It cost them a lot of money to revamp that field, and they have more cattle every year there. So I wouldn't, I don't think it's it's not a huge operation, but it is, they've done a lot of work there.
Where is that, Robin?
It's right next to the hops, like it borders Gravelly Brook. So if the hops farm is on the right, it's that next huge open field that they've redone, and there's several.
Yeah.
So
that's
they're doing more and more every year. So I just didn't want, I feel it's important to acknowledge what we have.
Definitely. Thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, thank you.
And that is a property that I was referencing when I said we've got one that's probably got like I said, half dozen or so cattle. That's I believe that's the Solari property.
Do they sell sheep or something else there? Don't they have a sign up for some other kind of meat?
Well, the sheep are across the street. They're on the other side.
So is that another farm selling, frozen meat? There's a sign along there somewhere, isn't there?
Yeah, but I think that's in reference to the the sheep that's on the other side. But yeah, I'm not super familiar with their operation over there. But I believe that's where that's located. It's on the other side of Arundel Road.
She made a good point. We're definitely going to talk about that further. I mean, encouraging. I agree with her. Encourage commercial, but also I want to call it hobby. But somebody gets into it and they want to do it. I don't want to deter somebody from beef, cattle, sheep, chickens, whatever. You know what I mean?
Excellent, Jim. We'll be talking about strategies later in this meeting.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I don't think our text is not. Our text is encouraging agriculture.
Yeah.
farming and so forth. So
we'll pick it up again with strategies because I think, people kind of taken agriculture for granted for the last 100 years or so, but
Sure.
I think they're going to appreciate it more.
We don't need an out-of-stater complaining about a rooster.
That's all right.
They're all pets. They all have names, right?
Yeah. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
So the next comment on page 16 was the Conservation Trust has expanded their holdings in the last 6 months, and I'm on the mailing list, so I took note of that. So we'll include this in the next draft. And then the last one. Oh, okay. There is a hand up.
Nuts.
Oh, good. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. This is Melinda Anderson, 5 Acre Farm. I was just wanting to bring some acknowledgement. I'm not sure. I can't see the paperwork. I'm just on my iPhone, but the Adams Tree Farm, I'm not sure if that was referenced.
We can double check that.
You know, the Christmas tree farm on North Street?
Mm-hmm.
I think that we did, but I will double check that that's in the chapter.
Yeah, I remember talking about
I think it is in there.
I remember
Yeah.
talking about it, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure, if this would apply, but, for history wise, the Freedom Farm, I think, I know it's not in operation, of course, now, but the history of that.
Where was the Freedom Farm?
Right at the end of the Gravelly Brook Road on the Lester Wiles Road or the Arundel Road.
And where would be a good source to find out more about it?
Wow, Werner, would you have anything?
I'm familiar with the location. I'm not sure what, that we have a lot of information in the property file for it, other than just, what the buildings are.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would say the Historical Society or Graves Library.
Yeah, my mother was telling me a little bit about it, and I don't want to butcher it up, but it's a reference of a place that was a safe haven in the wartime. So, farms did have their place. There was the Poor Farm and, the Freedom Farm and the Clock Farm. They had their resource, or they had their, uses. So, I just thought I'd bring that up for, more information and, the Adams Tree Farm.
No, appreciate it. Melinda, feel free to drop us an email too if you want to share any of that history. That would help us out.
Okay, I can do that. I took some notes when I was talking with my mom.
Okay. No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And last comment was just a missing piece of punctuation, so we will take care of that as well.
Hey, real quick, the page 16, the Conservation Trust. What's that in reference to? You said you were gonna go over it.
Oh no! Last several months, since that draft was written, the Conservation Trust has acquired some more land, so we're going to update the draft to reflect that.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. And next up is water resources. We're talking about a brook or a river here. Liz, do you want to jump in on this one as well?
Sure. Well, the GIS data calls it a brook. So I think Google Maps called it a brook. And if folks are comfortable, we'll call it a brook also, instead of Beaver Pond River.
Looks like unanimous agreement to me.
Or do we get to rename it?
I don't know. That wasn't your comment, was it?
I know. I just wanted.
The next comment was on the future extent of the floodplain and a suggestion of a strategy to differentiate lot coverage standards to favor impervious over pervious, and not just the area of pervious paved cover.
I think you probably mean that the other way around. You would favor pervious products over impervious products, right?
Yeah, my bad.
Oh yeah. Yep. Sorry. No, I know what you meant, Paul. So we think this is a good strategy. It pertains to development in general, not just land in the future floodplain, and we'll make sure that that gets into the strategies section. And the next comment was on mentioning the use of pesticides as well as fertilizers in the section on threats to water quality and water resources. And so that's something that we'll add in. Any comments or questions on that?
Yeah, what are the alternatives to that?
The alternatives
The
to
scenario.
Don't have perfect lawns.
Yeah.
Well, no, like I spray for mosquitoes because I don't want to get chewed up. So like I would want to encourage a company that's going to offer, something that can still be applied.
That would go into strategy, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make note of that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the other thing we could do, we could qualify pesticides by saying harmful pesticides.
Right.
Yeah, I want to encourage people to find alternatives as opposed to scorch and burn the whole thing because I don't like the mosquitoes in my yard.
I think that the section is
Dragonflies.
The section's not really getting into strategies and recommendations. It's just acknowledging the fact that pesticides are a threat to water quality. So we're not really getting into prescribing.
I just want to make sure the wording is, we're encouraging as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've never done any water testing for that in our area, but they've done extensive water testing for that all around Portland, the Friends of Casco Bay, and they have demonstrated the runoff, with the storm sewers into the water of all kinds of pesticides that came from the land, mostly from, not from farming, but mostly from, and they have, there is data showing how that hurts lobsters and anything, particularly during the molting stages when shell formation is happening. So I just wanted it there as a baseline, as a concern.
Yep.
Guys ready for marine resources?
You got it.
All right. This paragraph here, basically, Paul, drawing our attention to the beaches study that was finally published. What was it, February this year? And it's a pretty thorough document, and it has quite a few recommendations in it. And Paul, as I understand it, you want to make sure that we take all that good material and fit it into the comp plan one way or another. And I agree with you there. Tell me if I'm interpreting this wrong at all. But I'm proposing that we reference this. The study came out right about the time we were writing this chapter, but I would suggest we make a specific reference to it in the chapter, but more importantly, that we address it in the strategies, which we will be doing, not tonight, at our next meeting.
Yeah, that's a good approach.
Okay. Any other comments on marine resources? Okay. And then pointed out some typos. We'll run spell check again. And transportation. Paul, do you want to explain this comment, the GRB parking?
I forget the actual text right now, but we had just had a beach committee meeting and we had just gotten the 3-year data on parking, receipts from the parking at Goose Rocks Beach. So it was just
got it. All right, we'll make reference to that too. Okay. Economy chapter. Paul, you're questioning the name of the Hidden Pond Resort. Does it have another name that I'm unaware of?
It's the Resort Collection, Kennebunkport Resort Collection, I guess, is the current name.
Okay.
Well, they just own Hidden Pond amongst many other things.
Right.
Right.
All right. So we were collecting data from the state. Evidently, the state database is current. So, but
Or maybe they file everything through one name or something. Who knows? When they do their employee.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll go back and double check that.
My guess is that it depends on when the data was filed, and you do. I mean, in a lot of cases, you wind up with multiple different LLCs and whatnot that are, that have different ownership models, for some of these. But we know that a lot of these properties are all. I mean, you can see it, all on their website in terms of how they market and advertise are owned and operated by the Resort Collection.
Okay, so what we're proposing here is that we'll use both names, just so
That's fine. It'll be understood.
Yeah. I mean, Hidden Pond's just one of them, but there's
6 others or 8 others.
right.
Okay. Next up is food trucks. Last meeting, the meeting before, you guys had a brief conversation on that. How do you want to address food trucks in the comp plan?
Well, did we change the text? Because you, in your original text, and I maybe was looking at the old language, you suggested the fire station as a great site for it. And my comment was not so much because of all the competing uses for that space. And Jim had suggested another space. And so if we were going to, as a strategy or as a possibility, the VFW or Consolidated Schools were 2 suggestions.
Yeah, it's change it to the American Legion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I put American Legion Hall.
Why don't we just leave the location out and just put in as an encouragement that we want to have, to allow food trucks, and then just let the board
find an appropriate location for them
We could do that.
and a potential farmer's market.
Okay, so we kind of came around the question backwards here. Is everybody good with food trucks?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, from a practical perspective, it would be fairly straightforward to suggest, in those areas or properties that are existing, that have existing commercial uses. And, if you're talking about having 1 or 2 at a location, that's one thing, that can be relatively low impact. It's a whole other animal, if somebody's talking like Congdon's After Dark type scenario, where you've got,
That was certainly not my intent.
Right. But I just want to be clear, when people talk about that, there's, there's 1 or 2 or there's 12,
I like
2 very different impacts.
I didn't envision that for a town that's smaller than Wells.
Right. So, but Warner, right now, if someone wanted to get a special permit, I don't know what the exact reference is. If they wanted to get a special permit, almost like a wedding, they could do that, and they could probably do like that 1-day event, correct?
Yeah. So
like they could essentially set up a Condos After Dark and set up that one time.
So here's how we handle it, just, as a matter of practice. As a matter of practice, if you're having a private event, at your property, say, you're hosting a wedding, and you want to have a food truck there, from my perspective, I don't treat that any different than if you were to hire a caterer to come to your house. Those are, it's a licensed food service that you're going to have there for the benefit of your private event and your guests that are there. It becomes a little bit of a different animal if you wind up having something that's, that operates more along the lines of a restaurant, so here it's a location where it's advertised and it's food service to the public, and things of that nature. So we allow those kind of in the context of, of special events, but when folks ask the question, hey, I'd like to permanently set up a food truck at this location, we really need to address that in some way, shape, or form, through an ordinance amendment or some type of, other licensing piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Maureen, you hit on what I was just going to say. The comp plan is just your opening act here, but you can't really make it happen until you adopt an ordinance. But the two go together, I mean, if you put it in the comp plan, then it's going to, put the onus on town officials to take the next step and adopt an ordinance.
Right.
So I think we got clarity on the trucks. Where you said 1 or 2, I was thinking no more than 3. Is 3 too many?
We don't need to deal with that, do we?
Okay, no.
I wouldn't get into the details of that.
We'll move on to public services. And Paul, you pointed out that the communications warrant bill passed the last town meeting.
Right, and I think being built
our draft was prepared before the vote, so that's how come it's not up to speed there. And then you also pointed out that the sewer maps are not clear, and I agree with you. Liz and I talked about that. I'm going to go back and fool around with those maps some more to make it clearer.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. And next up is fiscal. In the fiscal chapter, there was a reference to restrooms at Goose Rocks Beach. And that seems to be kind of like a elusive topic as far as I can tell. You guys have been talking about it for a long time. When I say you guys, I mean the townspeople have. I know one of the first things you said when I met you is you guys like to form committees.
We do like our committees in Kennebunkport.
So I was thinking, seeing how nobody's come up with a solution for this hot potato, maybe our best recommendation is to go form a committee.
Well, the reality of it is that I don't think it's a matter of, from a solution perspective, there's only so many, ways to kind of skin that cat, The question is, I think it really is money, money and location. And, do you want something that's permanent, in a separate building? Well, like call it a use and buy a property. But, at Goose Rocks, I mean, it's, if you're buying a property, it's multiple millions, to do that. And then, of course, the big debate will be where is it going to go? And, and all of those, all of the fun things that go along with that. So, the middle ground, I would say has been, keeping up with portables. But I don't think that, I think folks generally would probably agree that that's really doesn't seem to be, the best long-term solution. I think, but, the devil's in the details as far as like, location and basically at the end of the day, cost. So
how should the comp plan address this? Should we just say, we recommended the town bite the bullet and construct restrooms?
Hey, Paul?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear your thoughts since you live down there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the problem's been solved a bit since the Tide was bought by the Resort Collection, because they're very welcoming as opposed to the prior ownership. And they've put up little signs on every entrance, on every public entrance, saying, if you need to go to the bathroom, come to the Tides. So they hope you buy a drink, of course, but they don't require that at all. And, so it's becoming more known, because since they put up the little signs, which I thought was very neighborly of them. And it's not, it's not in the area where most of the people are, is not that far from the Tides in terms of walking distance. So from my perspective, it's less urgent than when there was no place, and it was a half mile and you couldn't take a car, you couldn't lose your parking spot to go to the bathroom, of course. And it was a long distance to the general store from, say, the west end of the beach where all the parking is, into the center there.
So how should the comp plan address this issue, if at all? Maybe we leave it out?
I mean, I take my family down there, and I see the beach as a seasonal, it's a neighborhood, and I see it as a seasonal influx of when people are down there. I mean, my opinion is having temporary bathrooms. I can't see that place having like a permanent structured bathroom and toilet. I guess that equates to more people coming and going, and the beach being more populated. You'd see at a beach in New Jersey or something like that. To me, it makes sense to just have temporary bathrooms where they get cleaned out, and in the fall they're removed or at least minimized at the number that are there. Where you put them, I don't know.
Well, at the risk of sticking my neck out there, I'll stick my neck out there. But if any of you that have been to, the parks in Boston, you've seen some of the public restrooms that they have in place that are temporary and seasonal. And I mean, some municipalities and locations deal with it through, the purchase and construction of a trailer. It is a literal restroom trailer, that arguably would take up parking spaces. And so that's part of a sacrifice. I think from a connection perspective, I mean, we've got there's sewer in Kings Highway and there's water in Kings Highway. It's a sewer and water connection, that could be put into place. So there's a possibility for, a solution like that, as you mentioned, that would be a temporary solution, or I should say a seasonal solution that doesn't involve having, a permanent building, in place. But like anything else, like the devil's in the details, it's the cost, it's the, where are you going to put it? And, ultimately is that something that, that the townspeople, would support. But that's one type of, that's one, alternative, that could be looked at as well. And I think it's all, for something like this where, there's a lot of emphasis on water quality, at the beach, and you talk about, keeping it as a, family friendly and focused, having supportive language in a comp plan for a restroom solution, I think, is important to keep.
Yeah, I agree with Warren. We ought to keep that supportive language in there. We don't have to really solve the problem here, but keep the language in there so that if the town wants to move forward with doing something, in case tide ownership changes and the next person owns it is less willing to share, we have supportive language in the comp plan to allow the town to move forward with some temporary solution.
We can do
we have two, and I think, I forget what the language says, but we do have, temporary behind the store. We do have at the pump station, we have bathroom, and then there is the, then there's the tides. So we really have 3 locations now. Again, not ideal, but I think we should acknowledge where they are currently. And if the tides changes, so be it. But I do think
I don't think they want to be in the comp plan, though.
Yeah, I don't
under the radar. People know about it.
Yeah, I don't think we want to put that in the comp plan.
I don't think we can put that in the comp plan.
That might be a good way to get it, the door shut,
Yeah, we don't want to put it in there. I don't think.
Well, they're the ones, you should, I should tell you the sign they thought they were going to put up as a joke compared to the past, but they went out and bought these nice signs for every entrance.
Well,
Does it make sense to does it make sense to not necessarily identify the exact names, but just to reference that, there are, private entities that are allowing it, without calling out their name?
I think the issue is whether or not the committee wants to suggest that the town dedicate some resources, whether that's
Right.
committee capacity, time of staff, et cetera, in investigating whether or not a restroom is needed and where. I'm not trying to solve the issue
Right.
of where it would go. I think it's more if, is it worth
Right.
like spending time like what's happening right now, discussing whether or not it's necessary.
Right,
Or
and I
is it
guess
something that the committee thinks doesn't need to be included?
My initial comment really was a reaction to the language, which suggested that something was ongoing. And my point was there really is nothing ongoing. So I think there's a way to say there's nothing ongoing, even while saying it would be nice if there was something.
Yeah.
And the town
Well,
should say that.
Can everybody see this paragraph? This is what Paul was responding to.
The proposal remains active, and I disagree with that last sentence. There's no proposal.
So we'll take that
If
sentence
there's
out.
no proposal, then we shouldn't be saying that.
Then we'll take that one out.
We can say, because of the, the environmental concerns and the amount of traffic, we should do something, or something like, say some aspirational sentence.
Exactly.
All right.
I agree with that. I agree with that, Paul.
We'll make sure we get that into the strategy section as well.
Yeah.
Should do something. Okay. I think we beat this one to death for one night.
Oh, you have no idea.
We have a whole comprehensive plan we got to deal with.
You can form a committee for the number 2 business.
So the next up is recreation. Liz, do you want to address these?
Yes, sure. Yep. There's a table with the amenities at different recreational facilities, and we will add the pickleball to Rotary Park. The next comment was on public access point to Goose Rocks Beach at the west edge of Kings Highway. Maybe it cut out of the image. It didn't cut out of the image. That's the document that we got from the clerk, I believe. And that's what the official map at the town offices is. We can figure out if there is a missing site on there, but I wasn't sure what the west end of Kings Highway was. I thought Kings Highway ran north-south.
Oh, no. You think,
No.
what do you come from New Jersey where the coastline goes?
Well, I guess maybe we can coordinate on identifying where that access point.
So if you go out Dyke Road to Kings Highway and turn right, you're heading west. So at the dead end, that's the west end, and there are several there are 3 or 4 or 5 parking spots there.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, I know what you mean, Paul. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's an access that's not on the map.
Right. It didn't show.
All right.
is
No,
that-
down there it exists, so I know what you mean.
Is that is that a sanctioned access point by
Yes.
the town?
Oh yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Right away.
yeah, that's
And,
a sanctioned access down
But
there.
it gets to the beach in kind of a different way.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to go to the river and take a U-turn, sort of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Liz, I know what he means. I'll show it to you on the map.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
A quick return to page 4. I think just from what I know, that the park at Crow Hill is going to be sold. Real estate. I think they've already. Warner would tell me it's been divided up into lots and they're selling them. So I don't think it's going to be a park anymore. Is it just the tip of that area, the Crow Hill area where the bench is?
Hang on. Where?
It's on page 4 in this chapter of recreational facilities. It's just listed as one of our parks.
So what you have there? So you have a small piece of land that's at the base of Crow Hill that's owned by the Conservation Trust. So it's not a town. It's not a town-owned piece of property.
Okay.
So
good.
yeah, that little triangle
It
at
will
the end.
remain then.
That's correct. Yes, I
Right.
mean that
Okay.
hasn't.
Thank you, Werner.
Nothing's
Thank you.
changed with that piece.
Sure.
But the property next door to it that was private ownership has been subdivided.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
It's in between that and the water tower.
Right. Okay.
And then there were some updates to include some current language on the trails at the new conservation land, Meadow Woods. And a comment or question, did the pickleball plan change since they put rotary tennis courts? And was that the pickleball plan for Parsons Field area or?
Yeah, I think that was, I have to go back and look, but I think it was, you must have learned that we were planning to put pickleball in from talking to somebody. And I just wondered whether.
Yeah, the Parks and Rec department had that on their list of priorities for Parsons Field.
Werner, you know anything or not?
Yeah, I would. So we probably just want to get confirmation from Stephanie, the Stephanie Simpson, Parks and Rec director. I know there was discussion about doing some resurfacing work at at Rotary Park to better accommodate pickleball. So we can check in with her, specifically on those plans. I know that was part of their maintenance plan that they were going to do that. And just everybody knows which park I'm talking about. That's the one that's located at Beechwood, by Public Works.
But I guess it's the Parsons Field one that it said they were. I guess it said they were going to develop pickleball there, and my question was, they just put 4 pickleball courts on at Rotary, which are very well used as they opened, and whether they were still going to pursue the other one.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the only courts, the only tennis courts that we have.
Right, I know. Now they're multi-use.
Oh, why don't I check in with what is the person I talked to?
Stephanie's the new director.
Stephanie.
I didn't end up talking to the director. I want to say Brees.
Brees. Yeah, you may have talked to Brees. Yep. Yeah, he's he's the
sounded
deputy.
like it was a pretty developed plan for Parsons Field, so they wanted to use the same area for roller hockey too as pickleball. But we can definitely confirm that and revise as needed. And then that was it on recreation.
And that brings us to the next item on the agenda, future land use.
Did we want to chat about Dan's vision?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm glad you remembered that. Dan had some great comments.
Vision chapter comments.
Is this too big here? Yeah.
Too small.
Too small, okay. Dan was not able to join us at the last meeting, but he had some good comments, and I agree with pretty much everything he said. I don't know if everybody else has had a chance to read Dan's comments.
Do you want to just clarify what the comments are? What part of the document we're focusing on here?
Yeah.
Dan's comments are in.
What we're looking at was not edited by Luce and myself. This is what Dan submitted in his absence, and the black is the draft number 9 of the vision statement, and the red is Dan's proposed changes, and then the blue is a little explanation of why he's proposing what he did. Dan, would you like to speak to any of this?
Sure. I mean, I was just in that first sentence, like when I said in my comment, I felt we needed to be a little more expansive on the challenges that we would face in our town. It was sort of really focused on sea level and storm intensification and climate change. but we also have, diversity and housing and others that I think we share with other towns in Southern Maine. And I just wanted to make it a little more expansive, I guess, in identifying those challenges.
What's everybody else think? You guys agree with this?
I'm fine with that paragraph.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's go with economic opportunities here, Dan. What do you have in mind here?
So just a little bit of wording. Really, I don't think there was anything on the tourist part. I guess it was a little. I don't think we were driving like a huge change in our tourist industry. I didn't want that for people to read that and think that's what we were doing. That it was more of a try to expand it and try to encourage more of the the natural resources we have in our town. Take advantage of that. Besides the dock square and the all that wonderful stuff there, which is great. We want them to still go there and certainly spend money and help our business folks, but we also want them to enjoy the other parts of our town.
Yeah, no, I noticed you left out we were kicking that one around, and we used the word that just caused everybody to remember we were talking about ecotourism and some consternation. So I'm glad we were able to address the subject without using that term.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, go back up. Thrive needs to be thrives. It thrives in the face of.
Thrives.
Yes.
Okay, this is a PDF, so I can't edit it right now. But I'm going to that.
No, to support the industry, to help it thrive. That's correct, isn't it?
Oh.
Yes, it is. Okay, now I don't have to edit it.
Okay.
I'm an engineer, so I don't necessarily always know my grammar. But
To help it thrive. To
You got
help
it right,
it
Dan.
thrive.
You're right,
Really
Dan.
definitive. Yeah, to thrive.
That's why you're
We
on the
just
board of
don't
the
use the word
water.
to.
Okay, and let's see. So we talked about tourism, natural resources. How about housing, Dan? You want to?
housing, the main thing here was I was a little concerned, about the new homes, having to meet the highest standards. I mean, what's that? It sounds very expensive, and so I didn't want to. We certainly want to encourage folks to obviously build energy efficient homes, but I didn't want it to be a barrier to folks who are probably doing all they can to build a home in our town.
No, I like the way you and I was aware of that issue. If you do make it completely energy efficient, you're going to drive the price right up, and that kind of it goes against another one of our goals. So
Exactly.
I like the way you changed that.
So I just try to soften it a bit.
Yeah, that's good. Everybody good with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So just a point here is that it's important to know that as a town, so Kennebunkport, a number of years ago voted, to be part of the Maine Uniform Building Code. So you are what's referred to as a MUBEC town. And so what that means is that when the legislature created MUBEC, they also recognize that the codes are updated every so many years. And so not with every code cycle, but, every other code cycle, those get reviewed and adopted as reference. So overall in the state of Maine, there's movement every number of years towards updated versions of, the building and the energy code. So it's not, I pointed out because, with that particular vote, it's, communities, by doing that, one of the goals was to have uniform building standards throughout the state, with some limits that communities can choose to adopt what's referred to as a stretch energy code. So it's a and when we say stretch, it's essentially the next code cycle in advance of the others. But other than that option, communities are, if you're a MUBEC, you follow the same code that everybody else does in a MUBEC community. So,
Right, that's you're talking about like, you know, we're building a wall with 2x6 construction as opposed to 2x4. Not like I look at this and say, you know, we want to attain, you know, more energy efficient, you know, use of solar panels, right? Or a tankless water heater type stuff, right? You know,
Yeah,
especially the second sentence, replacing dependency on fossil fuels.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's your language here is more strategic in that sense.
Yeah.
But what you're not getting into the weeds with is specifying that, the exact, here's what we think the exact R value for somebody's walls ought to be. That's something that's governed.
Yeah.
That's governed in MUBEC.
Mhm.
That updates every so many years automatically. Through the process that the legislature set forward.
That's why you guys get paid the big bucks to come by and make sure it's in the right spot, right? The codes enforcers.
Well, I tell you what, the energy code is one of those ever evolving pieces that, it's getting to be a little bit of a tricky animal to follow with, there's quite a bit of building science that goes on nowadays as opposed to how it used to be.
And a lot is being driven by the private sector. People want homes to be energy efficient, so builders are building homes to be energy efficient. In addition, above and beyond what MUBEC requires.
Yeah, I would say as a general rule, the homes that are built in town, pretty significantly exceed, the minimum standards in terms of what's in the code. Just as a general rule, things that are built here in town are pretty efficient in terms of, as it relates to R value and appliance efficiency.
That also covers like standards for safety too, like putting hurricane ties and other things that make,
Right.
more safety conscious, and not
Correct.
one nail in your rafter to hold the roof down.
Right. Yep. Different part of the code, but similarly gets updated every couple of years.
Okay, and climate resilience, Dan tightened up the language a bit, which I'm good with. Education, Dan, you want to speak to education?
Yeah, so I just wanted to take a shot at adding the opportunity for continued learning throughout your life with access to UNE college. So took a stab at it.
I'm glad you did. That's a good addition.
Thank you, Dan.
Right.
Everybody good with this?
Yep.
Yeah, could you think about that language in the second line where it says learn to love learning? It could be and become lifelong learners. That's an industry term in terms of education. Lifelong learning.
Well, it's a good one though. Become lifelong learners.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, we'll add that in there.
Okay.
Okay. Waterfront access.
So I just put in some language to at least provide support to the town if they wanted to. There was an opportunity that presented itself to get a piece of land that would provide more access to the water for the townspeople. So
I think it's a good addition. Any other comments?
I think maybe in light of our discussion this evening, we could take out the second sentence.
Yeah, it's just
We included that elsewhere in the plan.
We just thought we'd throw it in there just to get everybody off on a tangent.
All right.
So that one might come back to haunt us.
Right. We get the hint.
Okay, environmental protection.
Woke up Paul's house.
So I was just trying to put something what nothing's ever pollution free. So
Yeah.
I don't want to give the impression that it's going to be as pure as when God first made it.
No, there's going to be a little PFAS in there.
Yeah, there's always stuff in it. A lot of that stuff's good for you too. So
Okay, everybody good with that wording change? All right, so Dan, excellent comments. We will we'll make these changes and we'll call it draft number 10 in the vision statement.
All right, good deal. Thanks.
Okay. Next up tonight is future land use. And Liz, you have some slides you want to share with us?
I do, yeah. I just a question for Werner. Do you want us to, before we close out a vision, totally, do you want us to bring up the comments we received from Lori, or do you want to wait until after we talk about the plan with the Board of Selectmen on Thursday to have a discussion on the vision?
Either way is fine. I mean, we can give, if we want to take, a couple of minutes now just to give everybody sort of an update on what we plan on doing on Thursday. I can just, I can introduce that and we can just bring everybody up to speed on that piece of it.
Sure. Yeah. Let's try to do that in 8 minutes. We're 1 hour behind.
Sure, not a problem. So just so the committee's aware, we'll be at the Board of Selectmen's meeting on Thursday to provide an update to the selectmen as far as the comprehensive plan progress. And so it's a limited, it's kind of a quick overview of here's some of the direction of the plan. We've got some bullet points to that we'll discuss with them. Just to let them know and keep them apprised of the direction that the committee's heading. We did provide them with a hard copy of all of the draft inventory chapters up to this point. I got to tell you, it's interesting seeing it in print form. It's a lot, but Lori thought it was important that they have a paper copy of that, in their possession. So, but we made sure that we identified that as just a draft. We'll also just kind of go over some, kind of timeline progress. And I think too, it's important, for us, and we should maybe briefly touch on it tonight, about what we think, the projected timeline, in terms of, because February is going to come up pretty quick. And, do we think that we're going to be ready for something for June, or do we think we're going to need a little bit more, time in public process, especially since we haven't really spent a ton of time with, strategies. So, but yeah, Liz, if you want to talk about some of the commentary that Lori shared, I think that's good. It's important to note, we've been working on this plan for some time, and so we've all kind of, I think, have, kind of an understanding and an idea of it. There's going to be, as we put it out to the public more, and when I say the public, when drafts get presented to the selectmen, I think, we want to think about adequate time to get and take feedback from them, on this as well. If we want to have a successful vote.
Mm-hmm.
So Tom and I prepared a summary. Eli helped us prepare a shorter summary that we'll be delivering along with a short update of the process. And we could actually pass that update along to the Growth Planning Committee too. It's got links to the chapters and our proposed schedule, which we'd like to try to stick to. We've got one flex meeting, but we're already not going to cover our full agenda for tonight. So it's possible that we won't hit our goals for those meetings. We've allocated about 2.5 meetings to 3 meetings for strategy review for all of the chapters. So if we do want to kind of hit the target of getting that done, in February, then we'll have to move quickly through those strategies. And so maybe once we start reviewing strategies, if we get to that, we should be able to get to that tonight. We can then sort of reassess whether or not it's going to be feasible to get through all of them in just 3 meetings. And
one of the things I'd encourage with the strategy piece of it, we've taken a little bit of time looking some of those over, that, as we talk about it, I would encourage us to try to pick, some of the ones that are, that are top hitters. And I think it's also important here to, once we identify maybe who the responsible parties are for these strategies, that we, have a discussion or send those along to those parties so that, that these pieces have a chance of being accomplished, because it's one thing for us to come up with an idea and say, boy, wouldn't this be great? And it may be another thing in terms of actually implementing it. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the necessity, right? And that's one of the, I would say, failures from our previous plan was that we didn't do that work. So we didn't get that upfront buy-in. And then when on the follow-up, it wasn't always clear for the board or the department head, whatever, that they even knew they had this action from the comp plan because they hadn't gone through and tried to find it, out of the 230 something page document, they would have to go look for it. Nothing.
Yeah.
So the two things we wanted to do was, one, make sure we get buy-in, and then two, they have an easy action plan that they could look at and see what they have to do. So that's an imperative.
So we'll work with you to make sure we get the appropriate chapters to the appropriate staff members.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the other part of it is the strategies, which we'll be tackling that next meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, a good bit of it is, is really the strategies piece of it, and to Dan's point, I think this is a real common issue with just comp plans in general. Great ideas that show up, and then they get handed off, and, the practical implementation of it, if you haven't engaged the boots on the ground folks doing the work,
well,
it doesn't always happen.
We'll have it formed just in time for Christmas.
You can put it in their boots.
There you go. Merry Christmas.
Put your boots out.
In case you wondered what you were going to do next year.
Oh my gosh.
So Warner, are you kind of drawing a concern that we with the lofty goal to try to get it out, that we may not be able to meet that if we're trying to get people to look at those strategies and the unknowns, if they're even willing or have the time to do it?
Yeah.
Sure.
I would rather have you speak candidly to say, if we wanted this to be successful, we go the route of methodically going through this and taking the time and just waiting that additional time to make sure we are successful.
Yeah, I just think if you're gonna have good solid buy-in, you want to make sure that that the groups that are going to be assigned the task are understand what it is, and if and can provide some feedback if they don't think it's if it's not practical or achievable.
And that includes the public too.
Well, I mean,
public input too.
Well, I mean, the public, will have. They'll have an opportunity to do, to weigh in, to those pieces. I mean, we're going to present this to the selectmen, and so, there's always opportunity for the public to weigh in. I'm more concerned about, the strategy piece as it relates to, things that get assigned to different groups. And to Dan's point, we've had strategies that get assigned, and, say Public Works might look at something and say, well, we didn't know, about this, or you may have a goal that sounds, lofty and great, but, to actually implement it and put it in place, could be, a significant financial investment that, that you at least should be aware of, as we talk about it. So
Werner, do you want us to go through all of the strategies with the growth planning committee before we have discussions with staff about the strategies? or should we be doing should we be starting the discussions with staff at the same time that we're reviewing strategies with the committee?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's worth talking about, like, what we think is the most efficient, is the most efficient way. I think if you're maybe trying to have two conversations at the same time, there could be some lost, in terms of, communication. But I don't have, an issue with, the growth planning committee taking, walking through the strategies first, and having a discussion of these pieces, because I think there's probably some that, might be repetitive and, maybe duplicative that can be reduced. I mean, we have some where there's a pretty lengthy list in some of the strategies. So I would suggest maybe growth planning taking the first cut at it. And then, and then go from there.
That's what we'll do. That's pretty much going to dominate the agenda for the next meeting of this committee in 2 weeks' time. So probably one thing would, help move it quicker is if everybody takes the time to read it in advance and make notes. So when we do meet again, you guys will just be firing things right off at us.
Sure. A quick question, in looking at these strategies, how many of these are directly from the previous plan?
About half.
About half, okay.
I think it probably varies a little bit by chapter, though.
Yeah.
I think some some previous strategies may have been more relevant than others.
Yeah, well, because as I'm quickly looking at it, what might also be helpful if it's available, I don't know what kind of format you have, if you could include who, at least on the ones that was previous, who it was assigned to.
Who's assigned to? We could do that.
Like the responsible party.
Yeah, at least then we can look at it and say, yeah, it does make sense to keep it with the.
Okay.
For instance, we had a lot of them that were assigned to the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board, which are already too busy.
Yeah. Dan, just so you know, our tentative strategy, Liz and I, we're going to throw the strategy itself at the committee and see which ones you want to keep and which ones you want to throw away. And then we're thinking about, coming back around again. Okay, you thought that was a good idea. Now, who should do it and when should it happen?
Okay, that's fine.
That's a good approach. So
that's good.
So next meeting, we're just going to be talking ideas. Yeah, this is a good one. No, that one's not. Let's do this, not that one. And once you guys shorten the list, then we can figure out who's going to do all the work.
Gotcha.
And a lot of the strategies some are pulled from and tweaked from 2012, and then some are based on the required strategies and goals and policies that have to be included per the state. And then some are based on the discussions and findings from the chapters.
Yeah, and when I said that we kept about half of them, it was because when I went back and looked at them, a couple, 3 times, I was impressed. But you guys had some great strategies in 2012, and so there's a lot of stuff worth keeping.
Yeah.
So maybe before we go on to future land use, which we will get through, there's only a few slides. I'm very hopeful. We did have some feedback from Lori when we met to discuss the selectmen's meeting about the vision statement, and she expressed some concern with the length of it and sort of the overall kind of loftiness, I would say. I don't know if that's really the correct term. And so we talked about potentially taking another look at the vision chapter if the committee wanted us to, and either putting together a shorter version of the vision chapter, or having additional conversations to flesh out, what maybe the major concerns with the chapter are, having those discussions with Lori and seeing if the selectmen have input before taking action on doing a revision.
Was it substantive or just length?
Both.
Well, it's kind of the discussion is, do you have a lengthy vision statement like we do that kind of tries to cover everything that's special about Kennebunkport, or do you have a quite a short vision statement that's much shorter than what we're looking at here?
When I looked at this as we did it, I really thought that the first piece, before we started getting into the different subject lines, like the economic opportunities, et cetera, I thought that first paragraph was really that vision statement. And everything else sort of became more supportive of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
We could label them differently. We could label the first piece the vision and label the second piece something else. You know?
Yeah, it was a little bit more specific of our vision of the economic opportunity, and our vision of housing, and our vision of climate resilience.
Right, it's detail.
Right. It was a little more detailed, whereas the first one was more, sort of greater.
Big picture.
That's an interesting comment, Dan. We'll go back and take a look at it with that in mind.
Is the one on the website the current one? I've just pulled up the website and it's dated 10/6/21.
Pretty sure. Does it say draft number 9?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the current one.
Less the comments from tonight.
Yeah, you guys.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Did number 10 tonight.
Yep. But it was good to have, another set of eyes on the plan, someone who hadn't been, or the chapter at least, the vision statement, someone who hadn't been working through the process. So I think, it's worth thinking about.
So I would change vision statement and just make it that first paragraph, and then add the vision impacts. We'll
go back and see what we can do.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the input, everyone.
Yeah. This committee put an awful lot of work into the words here.
I know.
I don't want to lose it, and I'll be happy to talk to Gloria about it.
Right. I'm just wondering if this is, you do these regularly with towns, and I'm wondering if this is the format that you have helped committees write and then been successful and have them approved, voted in, and have them approved by the state. I mean, to me, it's very formulaic, and it gives you everything you would ever need. I'm just wondering if this an appropriate length compared to other towns that you've done?
I think it's pretty variable.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong here.
Like I've written like a full vision, half page per chapter that goes at the front of each chapter instead of one, just one vision statement.
Yeah.
That's common in New Hampshire. But there's also 3-line vision statements.
Right.
Okay.
One of my goals is trying to capture what makes Kennebunkport different from every other town in the United States. And the shorter you go, the less you're likely to achieve that,
Yeah.
So Liz, you're going to talk to Lori?
Yeah.
I think part of the challenge here is that, remember in the very beginning, we've talked about how, we're going to have a desktop version of this, right?
Right.
We're basically going to have a summary document, and then we're going to have the appendix, which has all this other information. And so, because we have a lot of information, I mean, dare I say we way exceed, what we had in the 2012 plan for information. And so I think we just have to come back and remember and say, oh yeah, there's an abridged version here that that is what we see as the document that people are going to have, and the appendix is for those that that really want to dig in and do the research and read all of that that good inventory and historical information that that Tom and Liz have put together.
Yeah. And that'll be something that's important, I think, to bring up on Thursday, too, just as a reminder when we're meeting with the selectmen. All right. So if everyone's comfortable with moving on for now, I think it would be great to just run through the changes to the future land use chapter so we can see if we can get that chapter buttoned up. So I have a few slides just to walk through some of the changes. And we can pull up the document if necessary. And here we go. Okay, can everyone see my slides?
You got it.
Okay.
Looks good.
Okay, so the main revisions to the chapter were one to include that language on the proposed growth management areas. That's something that we had been holding off on until we determined if there was going to be any proposed change to those, the growth, the transition in the rural areas. And the committee decided not to change anything. And so we have an incorporated text to reflect that. We modified the discussion on housing affordability and residential density to take out some of the, as Tom calls, I think, grenades. And we included, modified the discussion on non-residential land uses. And I'll just walk through those changes really quickly and just interrupt me if you have any questions or comments.
So the version online is the current one?
The version on, yes, the version online that was linked in the agenda should be the current version.
Yes.
I think it's version 3. PDF 3.
Okay, I went right to the website because that's what I figured people could see.
Should say draft number 3 at the top right corner, Paul?
It does, thanks.
Draft 3. Mhm.
Yep. So we reviewed the factors that were considered when determining growth rates. We went over this information during the development of the chapter. The sections now at the end of the chapter, excuse me, have some language on describing the growth area. This is some of the information that's required by the state. There's 8 zoning districts that fall within the growth area. There's a range of different permitted uses. This is actually a carryover, I think, from 2012. A comment on zoning amendments would be needed to achieve village-like development throughout the entire growth area. And then the residential density, this is a section that's required by the state, residential density for each growth area. And that, of course, varies by zoning district. And in the growth area, it ranges from about 1/4 of an acre per dwelling unit to 1 acre for a single family home in some of the other districts. In the transition area, again, no change proposed to the boundaries of that area. Excuse me. There are 4 zoning districts that intersect the transition area. And the residential density of those zones ranges from 15,000 square feet in Cape Porpoise East to 130,000 square feet in Farm and Forest. So quite quite a range, and that just reflects the zoning districts. There are many valuable natural resources areas that are in the transition area. That's one reason why they're not in the growth area. So we've noted that. And again, a range of uses are permitted. We've talked about how in the in Farm and Forest and Free Enterprise, there are quite a few different types of non-residential uses in addition to your residential uses. And then in the rural area, again, no change proposed to the boundary. A lot of the town's conservation land and open space is in the rural area. And we talked about that in the natural resources review section of the future land use chapter. Number of different uses are permitted, commercial and residential. Actually, the rural area has the same zoning districts as the transition area, and the residential density is the same range, just due to the fact that there are the same zoning districts as the transition area. We kept sections on accessory apartments and residential cluster. We included some that doesn't even make any sense. Suggestions to revise the land use ordinance to further investigate some of those issues that we had talked about a couple meetings ago related to density, such as setbacks and density bonuses. We haven't included any recommendations on change specific ways to change those dimensional standards or lot sizes. And hopefully took out the controversial pieces, but kept a lot of the good recommendations and discussions that came out of our conversation on ways to look at increasing housing affordability. For non-residential uses, there was an issue with the data that made it look like there was a lot of non-residential development in Goose Rocks Beach zone, I believe. And I got some corrected data from the town and have put that into a table. And there are still a high number of permits that were issued in Goose Rocks Beach, but there's a note on the table that clarifies that a lot of the permits were for, I think, a condo development. So it's not necessarily like a commercial use.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was related to when Resort at Goose Rocks was redeveloped. And so, so you have, a good portion of that property, it falls within the Goose Rocks zone. And so because it's a motel use, it shows up as, a lot of commercial development, but, that doesn't really, how do I say, it doesn't really paint the right picture, because it's, it's
misleading.
Right. It's not in that situation, it was a redevelopment of an existing site.
Right.
And then we included some language that reflects some of the input from the public workshops on popular uses. We had a lot of that language in the previous draft, and then some potential ways to look at making these uses more viable. And then a short section on permitting more mixed-use development. So that's a really quick review. If folks have read the chapter or want to take a look at any sections in detail, I'd be happy to pull that up now. I would definitely encourage everyone to read the chapter if you haven't yet.
When was it last revised? Just so I know.
It was last revised. I can look at the date. But the version that was posted for the agenda is the most current version, and that hasn't been up for very long. Let me find the date here. It looks like November 30th is the date on my copy.
Do you want to pull it up? Or
yeah,
I thought I had. We were going through the chapter, and I took some notes on page 16 that I just wanted to suggest.
Great. Yeah, let me open that.
$16 has the chart. Affordable
Yeah, is
housing.
that what it's a chart and there's some like blue, I can't remember.
Yeah, there it is.
Can
you make that bigger, Liz? There you go.
Maybe it wasn't page 16, maybe I don't.
Do you remember what the, well, I can scroll through.
The blue part you got right there. There was another page. It basically said in the coming years, climate change will. It was like a side note.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Is it after that?
It's been a couple of weeks.
Is it the talks about climate change?
No, there was something it was said in the coming years, climate change will. impact, and I was just going to make a suggestion to change it from will to could.
Oh, you're a scientist now, James?
Here we go.
Yeah.
So
Well, I also don't believe in speculation and fear. Also, unless somebody's gonna, say
No, I think
it
you're-
will. I mean, in the
I-
70s, we were talking about, it getting colder, but we know what that happened there.
So I think that I don't think that changing will to could or may is an issue at all here. Climate change
Yeah.
may not impact some regions. The scientific data says that some areas will be impacted differently than others. But it doesn't bother me to change that to may or could.
That's just my suggestion. Other people can talk about it. That's just what I propose. But
So what are you proposing? May impact?
well, change the word from will to could.
Well, I think all the scientists, I don't go to a chiropractor to ask him to do brain surgery, and I don't go to a dentist to ask him to do brain surgery, but, the scientists who study this say it will impact some regions more severely than others. I don't think there's any debate about that.
Well, we all may be impacted severely.
I think we need to find the sentence we're looking for. There are a lot of them in here.
Page 14
Oh, sorry, it's this one right here.
in the blue box.
Oh, you found it. Okay.
Yeah, yep.
Oh, in the blue box. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I must have been referring. I don't know why. Maybe page 16 was something else.
So it's population change, not climate change.
Oh, the second paragraph.
Oh,
Second
sorry.
paragraph
I'm
we're
a
looking at.
reader. Okay.
The point of the paragraph is that the climate change may impact like the Southeast more than us, and they might get people moving from the Southeast to the Northeast.
Exactly.
Well, we know it is changing life for Californians right now. It's in the news
Right,
every
yeah.
day.
Yeah, and the
And
Southwest.
that's happening now. It's not in the future. It's now.
We could change.
Yeah.
We could change the second one, Jim.
Mhm.
Will likely attract immigrants from other part of the country. I think that's more speculative than the first one.
Yeah,
I think that's a good bet. If I was a betting man, I would put money on that. But I don't. But that's speculative.
Right.
No, I did have a note to that. So concurrently, a rising sea word May 4th, Kennebunkport.
No, I was talking about the will in the attracting migrants sentence. I think that is much more speculative than the first sentence.
Yeah, I agree.
I think scientists will say yes.
Yeah.
It's obvious this climate change thing is wild. It's all over the place, and it's impacting some more than others. And we know that the Gulf of Maine is one of the fastest warming bodies of water, and there are other bodies of warming that aren't warming so fast, and they're figuring that out.
So what do you suggest? You're suggesting take out which part?
I'm suggesting no change in the first sentence. I think that is science, and we should rely on science and scientists. The second sentence that says a state like Maine with ample water supplies and temperature will likely attract migrants from other part of the country. I think that's, a good bet, but I don't think any scientist could prove that, whereas the first sentence is provable at this point.
That's where you could use Jim's language. Instead
Yeah.
of will, you say
That's what I'm
could.
saying, may likely.
Or just may attract migrants.
May attract
Right.
migrants. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take out likely.
Yeah, so that may lead me to my next point over on the left. I think it's right after 12,000. Furthermore, the town should anticipate a potential influx of new residents who move to the state to escape worsening drought. My thought is to take that out because it really just, if we're going to write that, leads to speculation or, fear of speculation. So,
But Jim, I would argue that as planners, we should think that's a, likely, more than likely possibility. We shouldn't just say, oh, it's not going to happen. We should say, it may happen, and therefore, what should we do? If it doesn't happen, we're not going to bet the farm on it.
Yeah,
We're not going to build a new school saying we're going to have 500 new kids.
And I would say, I would say that because of the pandemic, we certainly saw more people moving into town. They could have been seasonal residents, but they were here for the whole year.
And nobody saw it coming either.
And that was completely unanticipated.
yep, right, that's fine. I don't want to draft up something that's based on fear. That's all I'm going to say.
I think
and speculation. So
It's
the
not really
qualifier here is the
fear.
word potential.
Not fear.
Yeah, it's
Which
more,
is potential. It doesn't say it's going to happen. It says it will potentially happen.
so, excuse me. So we're going to change the second sentence of the blue box to may instead of will.
Yeah.
And then is that all the changes for this?
Well, strike will likely, replace that with may.
Yeah.
May,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just got that. And then over on the left, should anticipate a potential influx. May anticipate,
How about should be prepared?
should prepare.
Should be prepared.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say prepare.
It's like preparing for a hurricane. We
Prepare
don't know when it's
potential.
going to happen, but we
Yeah.
know.
And if the storm changes course, well, you didn't hurt getting prepared for it.
Well, the
Okay,
town
so
should
we're gonna
consider the risk of a potential influx.
Well, I wouldn't call it a risk. Some people
Yeah,
would.
I think that state of Maine is generally trying to attract people.
Right. Right. Open for business.
So
I like Paul's word. Should consider. I think that's
consider a potential
I
influx.
think that would work.
How does everyone else feel about that?
I like that.
That's fine.
Okay.
Did I say consider?
Yep.
I think you said should be prepared, no?
Should prepare for, I think was the other option.
Yeah.
Should consider or prepare for.
Well, that's, yeah.
Be prepared for.
Considered, I don't like consider. If I said that, I'd change my mind.
Agreeing with you, Paul.
Prepare for.
Paul, how about prepared? You're okay with prepared?
Yeah, I'm fine for, yeah.
Should be prepared for.
Should be prepared.
Be prepared for, right.
Yeah.
Consider's too passive.
Yeah, I hate the word consider in comprehensive plans. That's usually out to like not do anything.
Right.
Yep, I agree.
Well, like you said, it may or may not happen. So that word
Right, but it's
could
just
potentially
that,
apply.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to visit any other sections in the last minute? Oh,
Just to go back to that real quick, in the blue, the last sentence, concurrently a rising sea level will force some Kennebunkport residents to seek higher ground. I just thought we could add in there, to add some wording to say, or consider building structures that anticipate flood stated in the hazard mitigation section. For example, building higher to reduce damage.
sure. I think that's a good idea. It's something like should consider
Adaptation.
adapting structures.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would add businesses as well, right?
yeah. Good point.
Residents and businesses.
The word force is a little strong.
Well, it will.
Well,
I know.
that's what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's yeah.
That's the point.
I don't think we're going to force people from leaving their property where, again, that's what I want to put, consider, like we have in the hazard mitigation section. We consider,
Well, we're not going to force them.
No. Right. It may force.
Flooding will.
How about the word prompt? Would prompt be more palatable than
C
force?
will force, yeah.
Well,
Will prompt or will require that, or
I mean, it's a combination of the C and the insurance companies and the federal insurance plan. It's
Right.
all of that.
Yeah.
You look at what happened to New Jersey and Long Island after Sandy, and it's a whole combination of, of factors which determines whether they could rebuild or not rebuild. Personal.
well, keep in mind this language presumes, a strategy of retreat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And so I think it's, it's important to not, to really not, adopt that as the predominant strategy. I think because there's.
But we agree
again,
we're going to adapt.
No,
We're going
I
to
don't-
include adaptation.
I agree with you,
100%.
Leonard.
I
I don't think that was my intention with this language. So I would definitely want to modify it if that's how it's coming across, because we have not explored adaptation strategies.
I think that's probably, that's probably the direction to head with that sentence would just be to, to tweak it with,
Yep.
Right.
it's not forcing Kennebunkport residents to seek higher ground, but it's going to, Kennebunkport residents are going to, they're going to need to adapt, and adaptation can mean, a multitude of different things, that may be, that may be, improvements that happen in place. For some that may be the choice to, be in a higher, in a higher location, but yeah. So I think, focusing on adaptation, is the right direction.
Werner, I like the way you emphasized adapt. We could put that right in the first sentence there. A rising sea will prompt some Kennebunkport residents to adapt, and then, take it from there.
Yeah, they're going to have to adapt their current footprint or seek higher ground.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's presumptuous to assume that, that the strategy is relocate, as opposed to, as opposed to learning how to live within the environment, that's changed.
Right.
Yeah.
Agree.
And we have to wait for the silver jackets.
That's right.
Right.
And I was thinking of that when
We're waiting for the silver jackets to help us.
maybe the silver jackets are going to force us to reword this again.
I just want to see the sketch plan that shows a floating dock square. All right. Like that's
The big Rome.
Agreed. Oh my God.
I just want to see those buildings on
Venice.
floats. Yeah. Right.
Sorry, not Rome, Venice. With the big
Yeah,
under the buildings, holding them up.
Well, listen to the Dutch. I wouldn't listen to the Italians.
Ooh.
Hope nobody.
Be careful what you say.
Yeah.
The Dutch are a bit more scientific. Venice, they've put in a bunch of walkways.
No, they also have, Werner, they also have a huge mammoth gate like London put in, like,
oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
there's a, multi-billion dollar floodgate that
Right.
The other thing about the Dutch is they've been thinking about this problem for 800 years.
That's true.
They've been living with it for 800
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. And it's tough whenever, parts of the city are sinking, that doesn't help the scenario either. I think, the Netherlands are they're in a little bit of a better position there.
Okay, what else? It's 8:05. Can we finish?
Yeah. Doing a time check.
I think we did it. I think we're done with future land use.
Okay.
All right.
Next meeting, we'll talk strategies.
Okay, so next meeting is what, 21st?
21st, we agreed to meet while you were out.
Very good. I'm there. All right, so we'll just review of the minutes from November 16th. Any discussion?
No.
They were fine. Who moved? A second.
I'll I'll make a motion, we accept the meeting.
Okay.
I second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thanks, Janet, so much.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. Okay. So thank you all for joining us this evening, and our guests. Appreciate those who joined us and shared their insight. And hope you can join us again on the 21st. And at that point, I will then wish you all a Merry Christmas. Until then, enjoy your shopping.
Thanks a lot. Nice seeing everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Thanks a lot,
Appreciate
Tyler.
Bye-bye.
Recording.